Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Soul Focused Radio. This is your host, Martin Friedman, and I am super excited. I know I always say I'm excited, but I'm extra super excited today because we have a very special guest. We have a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, somebody I haven't talked to in a while. We have our friend and colleague, Matt Remle. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good, Martin. It's good to be here with you and catching up beforehand, and it's just good to hear your voice. I think it's been quite a few years since I last seen you in person, so very happy to be here. I'm glad to hear about all the moves you making in your life, and bringing that healing to yourself. So it's very awesome, man. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Matt, and good to know that that you're also doing well through all the craziness of the pandemic, and the feeling is very mutual. Just to hear your voice and I'm feeling very, very honored today that you've taken the time to be with us and our listeners. We everybody that's listening today is just on this journey. What we call a combination of spiritual consciousness and social consciousness, Matt, and what we've come to understand in our journey is that all of this external social justice work, like all this work we've done to try to change systems from the outside, we kind of neglected ourselves, and we allowed ourselves to become a mess, like dysfunctional and a mess. And what we're realizing is that we are not going to help the world get right until we're right. So that's really the space that you're entering into, as you enter into this podcast with us, and that's what our listeners come to us for.
Right on. I feel that. I look forward to the conversation.
Beautiful. So we always like to kick it off with a little check-in. We kind of got checked a little bit because a lot of the conversations were me and my D, and we're kind of we're getting to be these old guys, and we got checked at almost all of our intros. We ended up just talking about where we were in the world and what the weather was.
Okay.
So so I do want people to know where you are in the world, but tell us something, tell me and the listeners something in your life that you're celebrating. What in your life is bringing you joy?
My family. It's always my family. Family brings me joy. And this is going to sound odd, but my grandmother, my last grandparent, she passed away last week. And while at the same time of being heartbroken, I have joy because of just the beauty that she brought into the world, into our families, and having the opportunity to just reflect her and the impacts that she had in my life. That you talk a lot about journeys, and just reflecting on that piece, how she was able to set me on a path to where I am today. So it's a mixture of joy and a mixture of sadness, but that's one thing I've been reflecting on lately, is just our elder generations, our family members, the love and joy that they bring to us. So I'm celebrating her life.
Beautiful. And you do have a beautiful family too. I haven't seen your kids since they were really little, and you used to bring them to the basketball games that Dustin was coaching.
Yeah, you wouldn't even recognize them.
No, I know I wouldn't, because that's probably 10 years ago, at least, Yeah. So you do have a beautiful family, and they're doing well. Everybody's doing well.
Yeah. The oldest, she's graduated UW a couple years ago and is now working for preschool down in Pikes Place Market. Speaking of where you're at, this area. And then the oldest boy, he's a senior, and doing running start up at North Seattle College, and the youngest is a freshman, and they're all tall and grown up. Oh.
Amazing. I remember when your youngest was born. That's just incredible.
Yes.
Just incredible. So I appreciate that. And I'll just share with you, I think what I'm celebrating, it's funny because you said how it sort of sounds a little odd or contradictory, but I'm actually celebrating the fact that I was able to get some serious dental work done yesterday.
Oh, right on.
I had 2 crowns, and it was like, I hate dental work.
Me
hate
too.
it. And it was miserable. I mean, I was miserable, hour and a half in the chair, but I just kept telling myself the whole time to celebrate that I can get this done, that I have the resources, that I can get this done, and that I don't have to deal with infected teeth and infected gums, and just how fortunate I am. So actually I'm celebrating I'm also celebrating that I iced it last night. It doesn't hurt that much today. That's the other thing I'm celebrating, and just being alive and being safe and being able to enjoy my family and friends and nature.
Yeah.
It's just it's exceptional. I almost always, even though I'm not supposed to talk about place anymore, I almost always mention Florida because just the nature here is just incredible.
Yeah.
The Washington State where you are and Florida where I am, it's like
Too
I've been
different.
blessed to live in both those
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're so beautiful. They're
Yeah.
both so beautiful, but just so different.
I say you probably be joyful that you got 70-degree winters and not our
Yeah,
gray, rainy Seattle.
yeah. Just a little bit, just
Uh-huh.
a little bit. But here we go. Here we go, talking about place and weather
Right.
again. But Matt, since our listeners are meeting you for the first time,
Okay.
if you could just give us your story, just tell us like who you are in any way and
Sure.
that you wanna share
All
with
right.
us.
Right on. Well, I'm gonna start with the proper introduction in my language, so just bear with me for a minute.
Of course, of course.
Matako yepi chante wastea nape chiusapi lako ia wakiamanata na machiab wachichu ia Matt Remle machiab ina Donna Harrison achiab ate Charles Remle achiab unchi Dorothy Nadine White and Dorothy Remle wichakiab Lala Colonel Harrison and Herbert Remle wichakiab ya waslaha hemataha uh, Marysville School District, Indian Education, Wowashi, Echamo, Wana Seattle, Elwati, Tukashila, Wahataha, Ampetukile, Wopila, Ampetukile, Woashte, Yoha, Martin Wopila, Tonka Tukashila. So, little about that, proper introduction in my traditional language, my Lakota language. I'm letting you know who I am, who my family is, where I come from. My Lakota name is Wakian Wa'anatan. My English name is Matt Remle. My parents are Donna Harrison, Charles Remle. My grandparents are Dorothy White, Dorothy Remle. My grandmothers, Mauchi, and my grandfathers were Colonel Harrison and Herbert Remle. I work for the Marysville School District up with the Tulalip tribes. For your listeners out there, we're located about an hour north of Seattle, and I've been I'm a program coordinator for the Indian Education Department with the district there. I absolutely love it. Going on my 18th
Mhm,
year, and
mhm,
just giving thanks to you and to your families and to your listeners for this day. So, and our Lakota ways, we have so I always got to tell people who you are, what you are, kind of why you are, where you're from,
mhm,
and that is a part of establishing a few things. One of them is your kinship, your relations, especially if you're meeting someone else who might be a Lakota, Dakota, and you're letting them know who your family is. You could be meeting a relative, so you're kind of establishing your kinship relations. The second thing is kind of a accountability piece, a built-in accountability piece. So I just shared with
mhm,
you, who my parents are, who my grandparents
mhm,
are, and so now after this program, after people listen to it, and including yourself, hey, that Matt was on
mhm,
there talking about this, saying this or that, and is he full of it? Or is
mhm.
he kind of speaking, goofy or whatnot? And so now you know who my family is, and it's kind of an accountability that way that we place on ourselves to be sharing correctly and to not share things we're not supposed to share, type thing. So, anyways, that's
Right.
a little bit about our traditional introductions, and the last piece to that, and it kind of even goes into a little bit about your topic here, is
Mhm,
I also shared with you my Lakota name, which is Wakian Wa'anatan. The best translation for that would be he charges with thunder, and that is
mhm,
a family name of one of my grandfathers from the late 1700s that was passed down to me a number of years ago. And his responsibility, his role within the Hok Papa Banda Lakota was as what you call a winter count keeper. And he had a responsibility to document what happened to the tribe, to the band throughout the years on buffalo robes. And so he was entrusted with those sort of responsibilities, as well as things like star maps and other sort of traditional knowledge. Why that's important and relevant as a part of our introduction in understanding in our Lakota ways, it's all about our responsibilities. So I'm telling you, what my responsibilities are. And so for those who come from Lakota country, Dakota country, or just have an understanding of indigenous thinking globally, because I've come to know and understand that indigenous communities around the globe, it don't really matter what part of the globe, there's very similar type thinking. So I'm letting you know what my responsibilities are to my family. So there's a lot of loaded information in there beyond just simply, this is who my family is, this is where I live, and this is where I work. So just a brief explanation of that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Matt. That was awesome. And I've definitely been in a lot of spaces with you and heard you do introductions, and this is the most like detailed
Mm-hmm.
I've ever heard you really kind of break it down. So I appreciate that, and it really fits into Soul Focus Group for our listeners who listen to our. We do a lot of biographical podcasts of our team.
Mm.
And one of the things that I often ask people is like, what are you and who are you,
Yeah.
right? And because we see like the what as very different from the who.
Mm-hmm.
And because for us the what would be like identities like race and gender and all those kinds of things. And the who is like, who are we? Like, who is our soul? What is our soul? Who's our authentic self, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it feels very much in line with what you just said. And then you also just said, why are we?
Yep.
Which to me adds like a whole other element too.
Yep.
Like, so maybe, I don't know, could you just talk about that for a second before we're already jumping in, but I have some specific questions for you, but what do you sort of see, ancestrally and traditionally in your ways of knowing and being as like the what, the who, and the why?
For sure. A part of this will stems back to our origin story as Lakota. It is very entwined with our sort of cultural philosophies and worldviews, perspectives on what it means to be a Lakota, where we come from, stuff like that. But in Lakota itself, the translation of that is to be a good relative, and
Mm-hmm.
being a good relative doesn't mean just to you're kind of like in the Western thinking of a nuclear family, but to
Mm-hmm.
and not even just an extended family, but a good relative to all your relations, which is the piece that ties into our origin stories, where we understand that all beings are interconnected, interrelated. We all
Mm-hmm.
come from the same things, and I'm talking not just about human relatives, but literally all of creation. We're all of the same thing. We
Mm-hmm.
understand that each one of us is made up physically of the things from the earth, and that connects us to all things. But within our origin story, it establishes what we call mitakwe oyasin, and that literally means we are all related. And I won't recite the origin story now, just because it's kind of long. It would
Mm-hmm.
probably take your whole podcast. But
Got you.
one of
Got you.
the
No worries.
basic themes that plays, I should say, establishes, is this idea of responsibility, of role and responsibility towards not only ourselves and our immediate families, but to all creation. And we can look all around. You were talking about nature earlier, how beautiful it is up here in Washington, out there in Florida. And we
Mm-hmm.
can see examples of this playing out everywhere. The right now as we're talking, these trees are filtering carbon and releasing oxygen, and that benefits not just itself, but it benefits all of creation, everything that relies upon oxygen to breathe, to live, and to exist. And it does it without thought or hesitation or question. That tree, that cha or chunshoke in our language, it just does that naturally as a part of
Mm-hmm.
who, what, and why it is. You can see it as in examples of the in the springtime when them bees go out and they pollinate and bring life to other things. Again, it's just doing that as naturally as a part of who, what, and why it is, and that brings life to other areas. And you could go on like this with examples all around us. The worms in the soils who, in their natural process of feeding, are releasing nutrients for things to grow. So, anyways, you could take that to the kind of next logical step in that, at least in our origin story, we believe we're the last of creation. And if we understand that all of our other relatives have a certain role and responsibility to fulfill for life to continue happening, then so do we. And we too have various roles and responsibilities that define that who, what, and why we are. And this is, again, similar. You'll hear very similar thinking for kind of indigenous, tribal, native communities globally, that we have certain responsibilities that we need to fulfill as a part of our role for creation to continue to exist and to happen. And this plays out in many different facets, in many different ways. So an example I shared with you already with being Lakota, being a good relative. So when I'm out here in the Northwest, I'm not originally from here. These aren't my homelands. I'm a guest in
Mm-hmm.
the Coast
Right.
Salish territories, like everybody else who isn't Coast Salish. So there's a responsibility that I have to carry with me to be a good relative to them, to understand, to support, to help, to give back in whatever capacity that I can to the Coast Salish peoples out here. And that's been accomplished and is accomplished in many different ways. As it relates to what we call Wechasha and Wechasha is the word we use for man, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really translate. It doesn't translate to man. What it's in reference to is, in our Lakota teachings, we believe there's essentially kind of four stages of life that would go from your being a Hokshila to a Koshkalaka, a Wechasha, into a Wechakchala on that male side, which is basically kind of like your baby, your infancy, into to being a boy, a young man into what you call an elder. But each of those translations isn't describing like he's a man, he's a boy, he's an old man.
Mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
it's referencing are certain responsibilities and certain roles and certain attributes that one comes to exercise in their life. So a Wechasha, someone that would be kind of our age,
Mm-hmm.
who is living the traditional values, the traditional teachings and responsibilities to protect and provide for all relations, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. That is really what would define somebody being called a Wechasha. So it's not just a man. This person is
Mm-hmm.
taking on these responsibilities to protect and provide mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And that again crosses not just our families or our tribal communities, but to all creation. With that thinking, or our understanding, you could see somebody, I'm in my 40s now, mid 40s, and or folks who are
Mm-hmm.
older, who we might call like an elder or older person, but you could, if you take that sort of viewpoint or perspective, someone could be our age and we would still refer to them as like a hokshila. That's someone who's
Mm,
behaving kind of like loosely like a boy who's more about their own self-interest. They're not
mm,
giving back or taking care of or providing in any capacity to their community. So these responsibilities are earned, and that ties into that why. With that last stage, that we chak chala and we nuk chala, what
mhm,
that really means is a person who might be male or female who has fully blossomed in their lives with passing down the teaching, the wisdom, the understanding and way of life of wo lakota. Wo lakota means kind of the Lakota way of life to the next
mhm,
generations. And not everybody reaches that. Not everybody is going to become a Wichakchala or Nukchala in their lifetimes. And you might also have some people who are the age of like 13 or 14, 12, 20, but they already have that way of living, way of being. So they're already a Wichakchala, Winukchala. So these are all very different ways. And in addition to that, these different ways of being within the community, those names. So I shared my name with you.
mhm,
Tied to that is also that why piece, that responsibility, that role and responsibility piece, where my family, in choosing that name to pass on to me, they're doing it not just because it's like, oh, that sounds kind of cool, or
mhm,
but tied to it is them getting to know you and seeing you and watching you as you grow, as you age, as you do whatever it is that you're doing in your life, and they really think about the appropriate name to pass on, because with that name is attached the responsibilities. And so by passing that particular name on, it's my family saying, all right, Matt, now these are responsibilities that you're going to work to fulfill in your life. And so I hope that kind of gets at that little bit of that
mhm,
why
mhm,
piece. Who are you? What are you? Why are you? And that why are you is directly associated with that kind of multifaceted roles that one plays. Whether it's in Lakota, we say there's kind of 7 stages of a relationship of yourself, and that's just one of them. One of them is being that Wechasha of where I'm at. So sorry, went on a little
Beautiful.
long there.
No, you're good. You're good. I know, it's fascinating to me to, just hear you lay it out this way. I'm sure our listeners are too. So no, I appreciate it very much. I want to like hone in just a little bit, and I appreciate everything you just said. And I want to ask you a question I've asked a lot of other people that we've had on this series, and like, when did you learn, like when you were really young, like what did you learn it meant to be a man? And sort of the second part of that question is, did anybody in your life tell you, act like a man? And I'm really interested in like in that part of your story, because other, like I said, we've all kind of been sharing this
Sure.
as we come on. So I'm really interested to hear, when did you learn what it meant to be a man? But also, like, when did somebody say to you early on in your life, if they ever did, like act like a man or be a man or anything like that?
Right, right. It's a great question. In addition to pop culture, influence,
Yeah.
that aside, the TVs and the
Yeah.
movies, and we all kind of know what they promote. But I think the influences would be just the men within my family. It was interesting. I was sharing off air before we started about coming from Florida, actually out here, and
Right. Yes.
how that happened. And my dad is a retired union electrician, and
Hmm.
so he had a obvious impact on my perspectives, at least at an early age, of what it meant to be a man. And that was kind of that hard working, goes off to work.
Mm.
He would take jobs, often pretty far away. So might be gone for a week or two, but he was in his mind, doing what he was supposed to do as a man, and that was, work, make money to pay the bills, to put a roof over your head, and food
Mm,
on the table type thing. But as I was growing up, I think the piece that, at least myself, I've never asked my older brother, missed from that sort of schedule that he had to carry because of work, was and being gone a lot, or even when he was working locally. I mean, it's hard work being out on doing construction, so he'd be get
mhm,
home late and exhausted and kind of go straight to bed. So I kind of missed that bonding piece of father figure, the
mm,
um, kick the soccer ball, throw the baseball type thing, or
mhm,
stuff that every kid wants, their families to be with them in their life. And I kind of started to resent that a little bit as I got to my teens, just because of the fact that he wasn't really ever able to be there, at least physically, for me. So
mm,
that played a kind of a role in shaping when I had my own children
mm,
later on, in that I made a very conscious decision that I didn't want to be that. And I'm not throwing shade or slam or anything against my father, because there's a second piece to that I've, as I grow older, I understood or understand now. But for me, I was like, man, I want to be the one that's taking the kids to the park. I want to be the one who's playing with them, whether it's getting on the
mhm,
ground with them at a young age, playing with their action figures, or video games, or whatever it is,
mhm,
or taking them to whatever it is that they want to go see and do. Like, I wanted to be that person, that had
mm.
a direct tie to what I felt I was missing growing up.
Wow. That was
Yeah.
awesome. I'm so glad that I got to reconnect with Matt and that you all got to be a part of that reconnection and to hear his story. I love how Matt tells his story. I love how he gives the historical and the cultural context for how he understands masculinity. He's really just getting into his personal story even a bit more. When you come back for part two, he's going to really share a lot more about his relationship to his father, his children, and father figures in the Native community, in the Indigenous communities that he was a part of. So excited that you all heard this part one. Can't wait for you to hear part two. Know, as always, that we love you, we care about you, we're excited to have you on this journey with us. So excited to have you on this journey with us. We just feel like the sky's the limit for everything that we're doing right now. And we're glad to have you along with us. Check out soulfocusgroup.com for everything that we offer and new offerings coming down the pike every month, for sure. So, with that, we would just ask you, as always, to stay well, stay safe, and most of all, stay soul focused.